guys, and welcome to another episode of Military Spouse to Millionaire. I cannot say with any degree of certainty that this episode is actually going to make it out there into the wide world. This may be just something that I do to vent and get a little bit of self-therapy over, quite frankly, some bullshit that I think has been happening lately to a few of my clients that just has me hot like chicken grease, you guys. So what's been going on with 3 different clients now over the last 2 weeks, I would say, really. I mean, this happens sporadically sometimes, but the last few weeks, it has been multiple clients. This has to do with on-post housing, in case you're interested. If you don't care about that, go ahead and swipe away or, sign off. But basically what's been happening is I'm getting my clients into contract. I am writing offers and submitting contracts per the industry standards in real estate, because as a licensed realtor, I operate within the industry standards for my profession. So that is important to remember as I continue to talk about this. So about 2 weeks ago, one of my clients reached out and he said, hey, like on-post housing, the housing office is giving me a hard time about my closing date. When is my closing date? So they know when to extend my TLA to. I'm like, no problem. It says on page 3 of your purchase contract, 45 days from acceptance date. Now, any 6-year-old with a phone can Google what is an acceptance date. It is a mutually agreed upon day and time for something. So basically, we as a buyer submit an offer. When the seller signs off on that offer, that becomes the acceptance date. So say we submit an offer today and the seller signs it tomorrow, that signature at that moment is what makes it a fully signed legal binding document. Before that signature, it is just a piece of paper. It is just an offer out there in the world. But once the seller signs, whether it's today, tomorrow, the next day, whatever day they sign, that becomes the acceptance date. And all timelines in the contract are then based on that day. Okay, so now that we have that, which again, anyone with a phone can very easily Google the definition of an acceptance day. So in the past, we've had similar issues, and all I've needed to do is send a memo, right? Because apparently on-post housing doesn't like this verbiage sometimes. And they're like, well, it has to be an actual date. Like it can't be 45 days from acceptance day, which is standard verbiage for most real estate offers are worded 30 days from acceptance date, 45 days from acceptance date. That is the standard terminology used. And that is what I use. Occasionally, we'll get kickback from on-post housing and they want an actual date. Fine. We do a memo with my letterhead on it, with my brokerage information on it, saying, hey, so-and-so's closing date is currently scheduled for January 1st, 2025. And normally that's the end of it. That's all they need. They're like, okay, great, thank you. But this time and the 2 subsequent times that this has happened in the last few weeks, they kick it back. They say, we can't go off the acceptance date. We need an actual day. We send the memo and they kick that back and have the balls to tell us that they're not going to extend the TLA unless we get an actual addendum to the purchase contract. And the reason that I am so flabbergasted and outraged about this is because who the fuck are they? They are not licensed real estate professionals. They're leasing agents. You don't have to have any sort of special licensure or training, to my knowledge, a leasing agent at the housing office. So they're then trying to tell me, as a licensed professional who does 90 to 100 transactions a year, they're telling me and my clients that I need to do another document to actually modify the purchase contract, which was written in accordance to the standard practices of the industry, to appease some arbitrary bullshit rule that they have. And this pisses me off because it is done, in my opinion, as a clear and blatant attempt to make house buying difficult. It is done out of spite because people are not giving them their $100,000+ to live in the shitty ass on post housing that they're offering. So they make it fucking hard. But the gall, the balls of on post housing to think that they have the right or ability to demand that I change a legal binding contractual document drafted by a real estate professional under real estate standards to appease them and their bullshit rule is just, I am beyond irritated at this. It is so fucking wild to me that they get away with this. And the clients are frustrated too. They're like, we don't understand. Like, what is happening? Why do they need this? It is wild. So then I have to have my team draft another document on top of the 47 pages that they've already drafted for this offer. And it has to go and be signed by not only my buyer, but it has to go over to the seller side and they have to sign it as well, which means I have to call the listing agent and say, hey, sorry to be a pain, but on post housing is wanting blah, 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 all the things. And the reason that bothers me is because VA loans, not so much now, but historically, if you talk to a lot of older agents that don't keep up with kind of the VA loan community and updates with the VA loan, when I first started in this industry and I would work with kind of older agents and I would say that my client submitting an offer using a VA loan, they would be really not freaked out, but they would be cautious because the VA used to be very stringent and used to have a lot of really crazy rules, used to be very like rigid and different than it is now. The fact that this is being thrown into the mix and kind of added as a difficulty to working with a VA loan irritates me because this is a right that service members have. This is a benefit that they work for. It should not be difficult for them to use. And again, something being written in a purchase contract 45 days from acceptance date, you can very easily figure out that you just need to look at the later of the two signatures on that document and go 45 days from there. Or at minimum, if me as a real estate professional sends a memo on a letterhead from a real estate company clarifying the date, that should suffice. And normally it does. But for some reason recently, it hasn't been. And I just absolutely think it's crazy that on post housing is trying to dictate to me as a licensed professional in an industry how I have to present or write my documentation to appease their bullshit rules. In addition to that, while we're talking about the subject and I'm just venting here, I also have a bone to pick with the leadership, specifically on Schofield. I haven't seen this so much with the other branches, but the Army especially has been really bad about this year. There was a memo, I think, released in, I don't know, February or March of this year, stating that they were shortening your TLA period from 60 days to 45 days. The reason this irritates me is because per the joint travel regulation for an OCONUS move, you can be entitled to 60 days. So the leadership, the garrison, whoever, powers that be, in the military community here in Hawaii, took it upon themselves to say, hey, we can give you 60 days and we have been allowing 60 days for, I've been here 7 years and we maxed out our TLA at 59 days. So for at least the last 7 or 8 years, they've been allowing 60 days of TLA because that's what they're allowed to offer per the joint travel regulation. So somebody up there, in the military world said, no, we're going to make it harder and more stressful for these families if they want to buy houses and not live on post. And we're going to shorten this timeline. So it doesn't make it impossible to buy. Guys, don't let this freak you out because, 45 days is still way more than enough time to find a house. You still have to be in contract during your first 30 days in order to get the TLA extension, which is always how it's been. But basically, instead of having a whole month to house hunt, they're only giving you 2 weeks to house hunt because then you need to get in contract. It's a 30-day closing minimum, and that makes up the full 45 days. It used to be that you could house hunt for a whole month, which was great because the island is tiny, you guys. 30 days is more than sufficient. And maybe that's why they shortened it, because they, you know, thought that it was too much time and they're paying out all this TLA money. But it just seems unnecessary. And again, seems almost a little like they're trying to make this the harder option, make it more difficult, or be retaliatory, just like I talked about in a previous podcast episode. If you go look at On Post Housing and they show you 2 houses and you decline them both, they say, okay, we're putting you back to the bottom of the waiting list. And if you decline a 3rd house, we're stopping your TLA. That is clear retaliatory action. And it is absolutely unacceptable. But On Post Housing packages it up as their policy, and us as semi-brainwashed military families, just like little lemmings off the side of a cliff, we're like, it's their policy. Think about what they're saying to you. Think about if I, as an agent, said that to you, hey, I showed you 2 houses that you're going to spend over $100,000 on. I understand you don't like either of them. I understand that they have sheet linoleum flooring and Formica countertops and appliances that are 20 years old. And oh, by the way, there may not be a washer and dryer in the property. But I showed you these 2 houses and I met my minimum obligation. And if you don't take them, I'm putting you back to the bottom of an arbitrary wait list. And then I'm going to show you only one more property. And if you say no to that one, there is financial repercussions. If I, as an agent, said that to anyone, it'd be done for me. My career would be over, because it would be bullshit and no one would tolerate it. But On Post Housing packages it up as policy, and we're like, okay, it's policy. I guess I better pick one of these houses. You guys, think about what you're doing. Think about what you're spending that BAH on. You have a choice. So circling back to my initial complaint, with the leadership in the military shortening the TLA time, it now leaves military families really with only about 2-ish weeks to house hunt and find a house and get into contract. Just to be very clear, as an example, I have a family who is literally shopping in the $1 million price point right now. They're shopping between $800,000 and $1 million. Very healthy budget, okay? They got on island a few weeks ago. We saw they had about 8 properties they wanted to see. We saw all 8 properties within a 2-day period of time. A comfortable, easy house hunting day is between 4 and 6 properties, depending on how far apart they are. Are we house hunting with kids? Is it just a husband and wife? I'm house hunting with a single lieutenant tomorrow. We are going to 8 properties. We're going to be out house hunting for about 2 hours. So it's not that 2 weeks isn't enough time. We're an island. Shit is small here, you guys. You can drive around the whole island in about 2.5 hours. It's not that 2 weeks is an unreasonable amount of time to get to know the island, to see the properties, to make a decision without feeling rushed. You can very much still do that. I don't normally show people more than about 10 or 15 homes before they want to start offering anyways, for 2 reasons. One, the same like 5, 6, 7 developers built the majority of the island. There are redundancies and similar houses throughout much of the island. So you're going to see the same floor plan or a similar floor plan over and over and over again. After the first day or 2 of house hunting, it's really just about narrowing down the areas that you like, or certain floor plans that you like, or amenities that you like. And after that, it's normally only 1 or 2 more days of house hunting before we start offering. So within the first 1 to 3, maybe 4 days, someone is on the island. They're offering on houses. We're getting into contract. So it's not that it's a huge task to do it within the 2 weeks that you're being allotted. But I just feel like it was an unnecessary thing that they did, that they didn't have to do, to make this process, again, scarier, more difficult, to sort of fearmonger around housing. And, you don't know the island. You're not going to be able to find a place in time. It just seems unnecessary. And it's enrages me that these things are being done to make this option more difficult, because your VA loan is a tool and an asset and a resource that you have. I was talking to a military family the other day on a client call, and they asked me, should they use their VA loan? Is the VA loan truly the best option? The answer to that question is yes, without question. Every day, twice on Sunday, if you have a VA loan, it is the best option. Number one, because you don't have to put any money down. If you were a civilian buying a median priced townhouse, the median townhome price here in Hawaii is $500,000. If you were a civilian putting 20% down using a conventional loan, you guys, that is $100,000. What? That is a lot of money that most people don't just have lying around to buy a house. You, as a service member serving our country and having the benefit of the VA loan, you don't have to put that $100,000 down. You can buy a home with no money down. That's the biggest benefit. The second biggest benefit is that the VA loan has better interest rates than conventional or other types of loans. So yes, without question, you should use your VA loan. But when I told that client that they would have to bring $100,000 down, you just heard the drop in his voice. Like, what? It's crazy. It's a crazy benefit that we have as service members that we should be using to its fullest potential every chance we can. Buy a house here, sell it in 3 years. Buy a house at your next duty station, keep it as a rental. Buy a house at your next duty station, sell it or keep it as a rental. Like, use it as a tool to build wealth. That is what my whole platform is for. That's what this podcast is about. And that's not to say that home buying is the right option for everyone. I say that so much, and I do genuinely mean it. It is not one size fits all. I'm not sitting here telling every single person out there that has a VA loan to buy a house without question. It's the only option. But it is something that shouldn't be fear-mongered. It shouldn't be that you receive penalties or negative backlash if you choose to do it. And it shouldn't be something that you stick your head in the sand and don't get educated on. That's what it is for me. Even if buying a home here in Hawaii doesn't end up happening for you or isn't the right option for you, you should still get educated on it to know about it, to know about the benefit, to know that in the back of your mind, it should or could be something that you can work towards, even if you can't do it now. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm going to be done with this tangent. This episode was supposed to be about buyer etiquette because we did a poll a few weeks ago, and that's what you guys voted for. So I promise I very much will be doing an episode on buyer etiquette, especially because I'm in a transaction right now that the buyers, you guys, are so out of pocket, so rude, so unprofessional. Obviously, I'm not going to name any names. We'll call them Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but I am definitely going to spill the tea and give the dirt on Mr. and Mrs. Smith because they are probably going to be falling out of escrow, and the absolute childish and unprofessional nature of what these buyers have been doing is just wild to me. And it definitely falls into the buyer etiquette category because they definitely could have handled this with more professionalism. So definitely stay tuned for that. It's coming. Thanks for listening to me, bitch. As always, like, follow, subscribe. I would not be here if it weren't for all of you. Thanks. Bye.